What's your phone's photo album filled with? Is it your outfits? Or pictures of your baby? Or maybe a photograph taken by a photographer displayed at a photography gallery? Taking photographs of anything and everything is a very new concept in the history of the world. We only have to go back about 150 years for photography to be reserved for a select few people who understood the chemistry behind taking a photo and had access to all the complex equipment to do so. In our collection, we have countless cameras, photographs and other materials that trace the history of how cameras became so widely accessible. But today we're going to look at 6 photographers that used 6 different photographic processes that did great work over the past 170 years to make photography a tool for all. We start in 1839 with the Daguerreotype, invented by Louis-Jacques Monde Daguerre in France.
A great advance was made with Daguerre's invention, the Daguerreotype. The lens was without stops, and the focusing was done by sliding the body of the camera backwards and forwards.
This was the first publicly available camera. Daguerre collaborated with other photographic inventors and studied previous photography inventions, such as the camera obscura, which converted an image of the world in front of it by allowing light to transfer into its box via a pinhole, and worked closely with Nicephore Niepce, who invented heliography before his passing. The French government acquired the rights of the Daguerreotype in exchange for lifetime pensions to Daguerre and Nicephore Niepce's son. They presented the Daguerreotype as free to the world. Soon after, several patterns popped up around the world of different variants of the Daguerreotype.
My name's Gane. I'm a photographer and artist, and I make photographs using historical photographic processes. I can remember getting in trouble for shooting a whole roll of film on one family of sheep that I met in a field once, so I suppose that was probably my introduction to photography. It would have been in around 2014 I first started trying to make daguerreotype photographs, and the camera that I used to make daguerreotypes with was a small quarter plate brass and wood field camera. It's fairly lightweight and quite a nice kind of handleable size compared to some of the other equipment that I work with. The lens is a Lancaster Birmingham landscape lens. It's roughly probably f8, so it's got a fairly decent depth of field for in the landscape. I think the camera was probably made about 1880, although it's hard to date because it's not got a maker's mark on it. It's might well have been handmade or made as a one-off. But because of that, it's kind of got its own little quirks and things that kind of mass-produced cameras wouldn't have. There's a really nice simplicity to the design, that it is just a light-proof box with a lens on the front and then a ground glass screen for focusing the image on the back, and a focusing system with the brass rack and pinion here, which does stick a little bit and likes to move of its own accord occasionally too, so it has, has a little bit of a mind of its own. But actually I find there's something about working with the limitations of historical equipment that affects the way you behave when you're making pictures, and obviously affects the look of the images in a way that gives them their kind of character and texture. It's become quite a kind of good friend, this camera. I've had it for probably I don't know, probably about 15 years now. Been a real workhorse, this camera. It's worked quite hard over the years.
While previous photography methods had a very slow development process or didn't capture the photograph permanently on the surface, Daguerre invented something more tangible that people could take home. Granted, only people rich enough and in specific areas around the world with access to a Daguerreotype studio could get their picture taken, so it was accessible, but only to a few. Since there are very few studios around the world left practicing Daguerreotype, we had to go to Spain, Cáceres, to check out the studio Jo studied in herself. Here's Joaquin Paredes Piris from Analog Inside.
The daguerreotype process, I think, is the most difficult of the alternative and historic photographic processes. It's the most sensitive and delicate of all the processes. To make a daguerreotype, you firstly need a sheet of plated silver, which is usually plated onto copper, or it can be plated onto brass and nickel. There are two different ways of making that silver plate. The traditional way is to have your sheet of copper or base metal, and then attach a solid sheet of silver on top and roll it onto the surface of the copper, so it's a thin sheet of silver on top. The way that Joaquin and I used in Spain is electroplating, where your sheet of copper or brass, your metal substrate, is placed in an electrolytic bath, and the electrolytic bath contains a silver nitrate solution. Electricity is passed through the bath, and the particles of silver then stick to the surface of your base metal. Once you've got your sheet of plated silver, you have to polish it intensively to a mirror finish so that it's absolutely immaculate. Any kinds of bits of dust or scratches or particles on the silver plate will show up in the image and form a defect in the image.
Joaquin galvanizes and polishes his own plates, but this step wasn't very common at the height of daguerreotypes. A whole industry appeared around daguerreotypes, and clad plates were sold ready to use. Daguerreotypists would have to make their own batteries to make galvanized plates because there wasn't any electricity.
So the polishing process is quite extensive, so you get this immaculate soft mirrored surface. And at this point you feel like you've made a work of art already, but you've not even got to put in an image on the surface, you've just made a nice little mirror. Once you've got your mirrored silver plate, the silver is then fumed over iodine and bromine, which makes it light sensitive. It's placed in a sensitizing tray that sits on top of a bath of iodine or bromine, so it's just the vapours of the iodine and bromine that very gently adhere to the surface of the silver and make a silver iodine surface that's light sensitive. At that point you look at the silver surface as it's sensitizing, and you'll see the silver surface change colour, and this part of the process is really beautiful and really delicate because the colour of the silver surface cycles kind of through the colours of the rainbow, and it changes through from yellow to orange to red and then to a kind of purple colour. So once the surface has been sensitised on the iodine and bromine, it's then placed into a plate holder in the dark and loaded into the back of the camera.
Cuando quieras pasa y siéntate y voy a ir ajustando las luces, ¿vale? Primero te voy a ajustar el reposacabezas, ¿vale? Échate ahora hacia atrás, mejor ahí, ¿no? Vale, sí, gira un poco la cabeza hacia tu izquierda. Sí, estás ya enfocada y todo.
Once the image has been exposed in a camera, it's then taken back into the darkroom, where traditionally it's developed out over mercury vapour. Mercury is obviously quite a dangerous chemical to handle, and this is one of the more technically challenging parts of the process. Then you'll see the image appear on the daguerreotype surface. The next stage is to fix the surface, so it's rinsed with a solution of sodium thiosulfate, which fixes the image, and then it's gilded with a gold chloride solution to make it harder and more permanent before being sealed under glass to protect the image so that it keeps. So that's the daguerreotype process. It would be impossible to make a portrait secretly of someone using these historic processes. The person being photographed becomes a really active participant in the process, and they have to engage with how to behave to make the materials work well. I think it becomes more of a collaborative act.
In 1841, English William Henry Fox Talbot patented a negative photographic process called the Calotype.
100 years ago, Fox Talbot first succeeded in reproducing photographic impressions on paper, and the cameras he used were simple and so box-like that his wife used to humorously call them mousetraps. At the same time, he discovered chemicals that were light-sensitive, with which he could treat his photographic paper. His first photograph was a window, and here it is, taken a century ago. Here's Fox Talbot with some friends actually taking the picture, and this is how they had to develop and dry their prints. His early efforts were negative, such as this, but later he succeeded in reproducing prints.
A negative is essentially when the lightest area of a shot photograph appear darkest. Negatives allow for the creation of multiple positives by exposing another surface with light-sensitive chemicals, typically paper with silver chloride in the Calotype's case, to light passing through the negative. And since the light only passes through the lighter areas of the negative, which had flipped the dark and light tones of the original photograph scene, the result is a positive, an image that represents the original tones of the photograph scene. Here's Joe to show us how a Calotype negative and positive is made.
The Calotype photographic process is very different to the daguerreotype in that it's much more portable. It also requires slightly less controlled lab conditions than the daguerreotype. So I'd say the Calotype is a slightly easier, more handleable photographic process than the daguerreotype. To make a Calotype photograph, the most important feature is the paper. So you need a really delicate, light, thin paper that's not got too much texture to it. So the first stage of the process is to acidify that paper, and that removes some of the impurities and the chemicals that might be in the paper from the manufacturing process. The paper is brushed with a silver nitrate solution to make the paper light sensitive, and also a little bit of acetic acid that just restrains the silver nitrate slightly and adds a little bit more contrast. So the paper that's been sensitised with silver nitrate is sealed in between two pieces of glass, and then that goes into the plate holder. And that's ready to go. Yeah, I think that dapple light will be kind of nice. We'll get some highlights in the background. I might come up slightly higher, actually. Might be nicer. The exposure times with the Calotype are anything from around about 5 seconds up to 20 minutes, depending on the weather conditions and the type of lens that you're using, of course. When I take the lens cap off, it will be taking the picture, and I'll count down 10 seconds. Are you ready? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's done. To develop the Calotype photograph in the darkroom, the paper is taken out of the dark slide and then taped onto a piece of blotting paper. And then brushed really gently with a weak gallic acid solution that develops out the image. And this is really my favourite part of the Calotype process, is watching the image appear in the darkroom. In about 2 minutes, the highlights will appear. In about 4 minutes, the kind of mid-tones. You just see some eyes starting to appear. There's a real pleasure to that act of making an image from just a normal sheet of plain paper in the darkroom. So that's like 3 minutes now. Once it's finished developing with the gallic acid, I'll add another wash of a really weak silver nitrate solution, which just intensifies the image slightly and makes it more contrasty for printing. And then the image is fixed in a solution of sodium thiosulfate or hypo and then washed. Once you've made a Calotype negative, the next stage is to make a print, a salt print from that negative. It involves a good quality sheet of paper, and the paper is coated firstly with a salt solution and then coated in a silver nitrate solution. And then the negative is sandwiched with this newly coated piece of paper in a contact printing frame, which squashes the two together so you get a sharp image, and placed in sunlight for around about 10 minutes. So at the printing stage, the sunlight does the developing.
Staying in France, but fast forwarding to 1851, we're now looking at our next photographic process, the Ferrotype by Adolphe Alexander Martin. This photographic method is historically regarded to be very accessible, as the photo could be taken and developed on the spot while you were out with your family at the market. It was also somewhat affordable, with the process often being called Tintype by the general public because of the cheap tinny feel of the iron plates they were photographed on. But making a Tintype today isn't so easy. Let's hear from our Tintype photographer.
My name's Tia Bannon. I'm an actor, photographer, writer and artist from Ladbroke Grove, West London. My introduction to cameras came from my mum. She had done a darkroom course before I was born, and so growing up there were loads of prints of my siblings around the house, and we also had loads of disposable cameras, point and shoots, and one birthday I was given a blue Fisher-Price camera, sort of plastic thing that I used to love. As a self-taught photographer, I'd already been working with film and in the darkroom, but I wanted to explore these other avenues and came across wet plate, and now here we are. Okay, I'm going to make a plate. What's really exciting about the wet plate process is that you can use different materials as your canvas. So you can have something like trophy metal, which comes in a range of different colours and is cut to size. So you take one of these lovely plates, this has been cut into a 4x5 shape, and then you pour a chemical called collodion onto this plate. Collodion stinks, so I think it's really important to wear a respiratory mask. So I wear a 3M mask with respirator attachments so that I can keep my lungs nice and healthy. Then you're going to place the plate into the silver tank, which is where the silver nitrate lives. The silver nitrate is going to sensitize the collodion to light. You leave it in the tank in the dark for a couple of minutes, and then you take it out under a red light. The dark slide is where you would put the plate. You actually put it in this back part here, and it's held in here, and then this is the little gate that lets the light in. Once you've got a piece of tin or trophy metal or glass in here, it's completely light tight and will protect it from being exposed to light until you expose it.
I can even take off my mask now. For a second. Oh, always in the hair.
Then you're going to load your dark slide after you've framed up into your camera. If you drop your chin a little bit, nice, and that's really lovely. And make sure you've got the right lighting conditions. 3, 2, thank you. And then you close the shutter once you're done. You think you've exposed your plate well enough, and you then go and develop it in the dark room, so under red light conditions. Once you've developed the image, you will use water to stop the image being developed. And then you will place the developed image in a tray of fix.
Okay, let's see what we're working with.
And what fix is going to do is wipe away all of the excess silver and leave you with a positive image. It's starting to pop up now, you can see slightly. But also we've got this like ghosting that's happening. Normally you shouldn't touch it in the fix, but can you see here and here, that's like ghosting, which could be chemical. And sometimes when you put it in the wash, you can brush it off. I think we should do another one. Yeah. And I'll put in that third light to just try and give you a bit of a hair light. The backdrop's also so dark. It's a process that you don't always know what you're going to get. So sometimes your chemicals could be on your side and sometimes they are definitely not. 3, 2. Woo! One of the things that wet plate gives me that the other forms of photography doesn't is that instantaneous feeling of magic.
Ooh.
Once you take a photo and you've put it in the developer, you start to see it sort of appear, and then you put it in the fix and all the silver drains away. You get to experience like a moment of magic. There's nothing quite like it, I think. It's quite special to be able to hold a photograph that you've created in your hand. What draws me to wet plate photography as an artistic outlet is actually its colonial legacy. I'm interested in understanding if there is a way to reclaim process and also to create access for people in my communities and other communities like mine who have historically not had access to this process. This is the Tintype that we made of Rachel today. What I really enjoy about this image is the sort of ghosts that exist. Sometimes it can be a chemical failure or some impurities in the holder itself. But I think they tell a story or add to the etherealness of the process. What's also important to me is trying to represent accurately skin tone in wet plate. It's a process that is reliant on the UV index. So different colours, like Rachel's jumper is actually very orange, show up differently in the process based on the undertones and the colours that exist. I think it's a pretty accurate representation for me of Rachel's skin tone, and feels like it belongs to a now time, but also a time from before, which is sort of the exciting thing about this process.
My eyes.
Let us see what we got.
Today we also made a self-portrait. This is on iridescent glass. I don't know if you can see. With glass you often get this negative like image, so depending on your background you can't always see what is appearing. But this is me. I'm wearing my Jamaica football team shirt. Self-portraiture is an important part of my practice. It's a way to document and evidence myself, utilising the tools that I'm engaging with. I think it's also just an important part of anyone's daily life now. We take a lot of selfies, so it's really special to be able to create my own selfie on a piece of iridescent glass.
Ferrotypes are a form of wet plate collodion photography, a process invented by Frederick Scott Archer in 1851. The same process is used whether a photograph is captured on glass or metal. Those captured on glass are known as ambrotypes. Fast forward to 1885, New York, George Eastman receives a patent for roll films. Roll films held up to 100 exposures and were thin, compact, and flexible. Unlike the individual metal plates that had to be replaced one at a time and done by professionals, Eastman created a photographic process that allowed anyone to take dozens of photographs at a time, and not have to worry about developing them at all. He invented the Kodak camera. At the time, the Kodak would be bought with a film of 100 exposures ready to go inside. Once the customer had taken all of their photos, they would mail the camera and $10 to the Kodak Eastman Company, who would develop the images for you and mail your camera back to you with a fresh roll of film inside. Of course, $10 in 1888 is equivalent to about $330 today, so the camera was only accessible to the wealthy for a while, until 1900, when Kodak released the $1 Brownie, a much more affordable option, being the equivalent of $37.57 today. But roll film cameras look quite different today. Let's meet our next photographer.
My name is Timmy Akindele-Ajani. I'm from East London and I'm a filmmaker and photographer. Turn your eyes to me, in your head. There you go. And smile. My introduction to cameras when I was a kid was actually like the really early cameras that went into mobile phones. I remember making like little skits with my brother on like a Nokia phone that like my mum had, and obviously the quality on those was terrible. I remember the first DSLR camera we got. I've actually got it here with me. It's this. This was the family camera, which very quickly became my camera. It's a Canon 550D. We got it maybe when I was like 12 years old, and ever since then I've been obsessed with photography. When I think about my photography, I think there are a few different areas of interest that I explore. I like to challenge people's preconceived notions of what spaces and places might look like. But a lot of it generally can be described as like landscape photography with a bit of street and a bit of documentary. I'm definitely very interested in Black Joy and like the instances of Black Joy that are currently happening in the UK. It means I photograph like a lot of like Black British parties. Where is it? It's in here somewhere. Excuse me, there's a lot of pictures in here. So there's this picture which is from Recess Land, which is thousands of Black Brits coming together to celebrate Black British culture in a fun fair in Kent. I mean, I just love being present for moments like this because there is a really strong oral tradition within Black British culture, and while that is important, it is a shame sometimes because these stories can go untold or they can be sort of lost to time. So I just want to make sure that I'm like around and present to be contributing to the images that make up our stories. There is one sort of phrase that I think is really important for me when I think about photography. It's a quote from Susan Sontag, and in this quote she says, "The ultimate wisdom of the photographic image is to say, there is the surface, now think or feel what is beyond it." For me, that's what I want my photography to do. There's this picture which I took stepping off of a cruise ship. immediately at the surface, it's a welcome party, but on a deeper level, it encourages you to look deeper and find out what's actually going on beneath it. This is one of my favorite photographs. It's one of very few photographs of mine that I've printed to this size. It has a lot of the aspects that I get quite excited about when I take a picture. It's got a sunset, love me a sunset. It's got a clearly defined subject, which I don't think you necessarily need to have for every photograph, but I like it because it's an easy starting point and then your eye can sort of wander and explore elsewhere. So as far as the camera that I'm using now, it's a Canon AE1 program. So it's a sort of mid-tier film camera from the 70s, I believe. It's a bit of a tank. This one is definitely busted and has seen better days, but it's done me really well over the years. And I'm gonna load today Fujifilm 400 because it's a little bit dark. On film cameras, the sensitivity is fixed, so you can't change it. So because it's dark, we're gonna use 400 because it's more sensitive to light and we will be able to get a better image. The 100 is good for when it's like really bright outside and you actually need to be less sensitive to light. Let's load this. It is pretty straightforward. There we go. In there. Give that a roll, give that a roll. Then I like to advance the film at least once so that I know that it's nice and tucked in there properly. And then shoot a few just to get it loaded up to 1. And there we go. Just like that. Took a picture. Sweet. So today I'm going to take some self-portraits and we can have a look at the process from the very start to the end. I think I only take good pictures when I use film. I think when I do the digital photography approach, I get a little bit too cerebral because I can see it and it's less about how I'm behaving in that moment and it's more about what I'm getting because I can see the results. Whereas film photography, because you can't see the results, you just have to go with the flow. All right, I've got 10 seconds. Depending on the temperature of the chemicals, depending on the time that you allow the film to be exposed to chemicals for, all these things allow for different interpretations of how the image can eventually look. I love the photochemical process. I like that it is light meets photosensitive material, which is developed through chemicals, and then those chemicals produce an image. Do you think blue and purple works? I like that the grain structure that you find in a film picture can make it feel a bit more alive. I just like how film photography makes me creative, how it makes me move, how it makes me exist as a creative individual. So these are some of the things I use within my photographic practice. This is my scanner. This is what it looks like inside. So the film goes on here. It goes into the film holder. Put it there, the 2 points line up. Slap that down, press the button, it scans through the image in a very slow and laborious process, but it's because it's getting really high resolution image. This is my photo archive of my negatives. I think it's really important as raw film photographers to keep a hold of your negatives because there was once a time where, you know, the highest resolution image that you could get from 35mm wasn't that high. But as technology has moved forward, we've been able to like get a lot better quality out of our scanners. I'm going to pull out an example of one of my negatives. These are some negatives from a trip to New York in 2023. These are 3 different film stocks. This is HP5, this is Lomography Purple, and this is Portra 400. So 3 films that I kind of use interchangeably. As far as how we take the negative into a digital image, that's how it happens. I like to develop my film at this lab called Bannon Labs. I'm going to put this away and then I guess we can head down there and see about getting one of these rolls developed.
Photographs on roll film are captured as negatives, so just like the Calotype, you can develop multiple prints for you and your loved ones. In 1888, you would send your roll film back to the Kodak factory to develop your images. But today you can get them developed at local photography stores or even certain pharmacies. Let's go to Modern Labs with Eduardo to see how roll film is developed for us today.
I'm Eduardo, I'm from Italy. I run this lab. So now I've got this roll from Timmy. We're gonna process it through the dip and dunk machine, and then once it comes out, we can scan and print from it. For developing color negative film, everybody uses a process called C41, which was engineered by Kodak. So this is called a dip and dunk machine because it literally dunks the film into the chemistry, which are held in big vertical tanks. And to do that, it goes through hanging up on these racks. There's a weight at the bottom that keeps it straight. This is the dip and dunk machine, the inside of it, the chemistry part. And you can see here there's different tanks. That's the developer, that's the bleach. This is a wash bath that this machine has between the bleach and the fix. This is the fix. The film, the color negative film itself, is made from a series of layers which are all coated onto the base, and then the 4 different layers, they each are coupled with the red, green and blue color couplers. They couple themselves with the silver halide, which is what makes the grain, that have been exposed, and the color just gets retained within that silver halide that was exposed. Once the film goes into the bleach, the silver halides which have not been exposed to the light during the shooting process get washed away from the base. Then after that it goes into the fixer, which basically fixes the couplers to the silver halides that have been developed and haven't been washed away in the bleach fix. In a few seconds the arm is going to come up and you're going to see the way it works. So basically, there we go. All the racks, they stop on these grooves and the machine with this chain just moves around every single step. Lets it drip a little bit because you don't want to have too much cross-contamination going forward. After the fixer, it goes through a wash bath. In our machine, we have 2 wash baths of running water just from the mains. And this happens in a cycle every 90 seconds. All right, there you go. That's Timmy's roll developed. Put it up here. Cut the weight out. Then I generally inspect for drips of some kind. Also, especially if it's like one of the first ones of the day, you check for dust, cleanliness, general marks that this machine might do. This one looks very good. And I would take it to the light table. Color printing process, which is codified as RA4, is the process of taking a negative picture, exposing it through an enlarger onto photosensitive paper, and then developing this piece of paper into a positive image. I'm going to mount the negative on the holder for the enlarger so we can set up the print. Cool. Right, so the negative is now in the enlarger. I'm going to shine the light through it. The light will start from a light bulb in here, go through a mixing box, which is this one, go through the negative, which is in here, through a light, which is a 50mm because we're printing 35mm, and into the easel, which is where the paper is going to be. Next, I am going to double check the focus with the grain finder, which is just like a magnifying lens. Okay, and now it's ready to be exposed. The chemistry for the RA4 machine are quite similar to the C41 process. You have the developer first, and then the bleach and the fix bath are in the same chemistry, and then it's just a series of wash baths. In about 4-5 minute time, you have the final dry print coming out of the machine. So we have developed Timmy's film. Now we're gonna digitize it and put it through the scanner. So I'm gonna take the label, put it at the start, and then just feed the whole roll uncut through the scanner. The scanner is now just gonna eat up the whole roll, make its previews, which are then gonna allow me to make some adjustments. And now you get to see the pictures, 6 at a time, and there's a few things that you can adjust. This one can probably go a bit darker, this one can go a bit brighter, and it's a bit maybe too blue. Here we go, done. This is all I did for my first 6 months here, just cutting. Cool. Now I'm gonna put it in a sleeve. So this is the contact sheet, which is just a print of the whole negative that we developed together. So this is the whole roll that you guys shot this morning. Then we developed it, we scanned it, we selected this frame, and then we did an enlargement of that frame.
Staying in America, but jumping in time to 1948, founder Edwin H. Land of Polaroid Corporation's created instant film.
The chemicals develop and print the negative inside the camera. Dr. Land demonstrates his camera of tomorrow. You take a picture, and in less than a minute, out comes the finished negative and print, like this.
Instant film changed the game for accessibility, because for the first time, an individual without any photographic experience or knowledge of any light-sensitive chemicals could take a photograph and have a printed copy within a minute. Like this one of an ultrasound scan taken in 1981 for the expecting parents to take home. No more sending rolls of film to factories far away and waiting on them to be developed and returned. The photograph became instant. There's been a few iterations of instant film. We'll go through the science behind the one more commonly used today. Much like roll film, instant film has silver halide dyes suspended in gelatin over a layer of developing agent. When the photo is taken, the shutter exposes the instant film to light. And then this is where instant film and cameras are unique to roll film. The instant film gets squeezed through the rollers of the Polaroid, or instant camera. This evenly spreads the developing agent through all the layers of dye, allowing the photograph to develop in the following 60 seconds. While you can't exactly create copies of Polaroids because they don't create negatives, it's easy enough to wait a few seconds for the instant film to roll out of the camera and take another.
Should we take a photo? My name is Kai Kwesi Thorne from South East London, and I am an artist. Like natural. There you go. I'll come back to it. When I was about 14, 15, my mum got a DSLR and I asked to use it and she said no. And then I asked to use it again and she said no. And then one time I just took it because I just really wanted to get to know how to use it and take it out. I wasn't that interested in the photos I'd taken when of like the 3, 2, 1 cheese kind of photos. So when people are aware of the camera and they're kind of playing to the camera. But I figured out that I really like the moments when people are unaware of the camera. If it's a group of people laughing at a joke, or someone deep in thought, or someone with no thoughts at all, some kind of daydreaming. Those are kind of the moments that I'm drawn to a lot of the time. So this is my Polaroid Now camera. It goes with me everywhere I can take it. There's a double exposure. It will tell you how many you have left on a nice, lovely little digital screen. There's a timer. There's a quote on the bottom that I honestly only just realized. It says, an essential aspect of creativity is not being afraid to fail. which is very real, especially with film photography. It can test your patience, so you have to kind of learn to enjoy the process of using things, otherwise you can get very frustrated. Polaroid photography in essence is kind of all the steps of film photography kind of squashed into one. It's really beautiful to just be able to have a photo that you can look at straight away. And there is something about that it is physical, that it's chemicals in a sheet, that it does capture the place and like the feeling of the place a lot more than the digital photography feels or seems to. It might not be something that you can tell by looking at, but it's something that you can feel. A recent trip that I went on to St. Lucia, there was one day that we went to like a waterfall in the mountains, and the images feel kind of warm, and it feels like being there. That's the best way I can describe it. If your film gets too hot, the film will misbehave. If you don't keep it away from the sun, if you expose it to light too early, the film will misbehave. It's kind of getting to know the medium and getting to know how it works, how it doesn't work, what it likes, what it doesn't like. But it kind of makes it all the more satisfying when you do figure all of those things out. To let the film develop properly, keep it away from direct light, keep it cool if possible. Don't listen to Andre 3000, he lied. You don't have to shake it, you'll probably ruin the film somehow. Just keep it cool and dark and flat, and then you should be good. See how this turned out? Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's the beautiful photo of the production team making this video. Good photo. So this is a Polaroid book, so it's like a photo album specifically for Polaroid photos. In here I've kept all of the photos that I've decided to keep instead of give away. These are the photos from LA. These are some of the photos from St. Lucia. It's like a waterfall. As my little brother, I was splashing him with water at the time. There's loads of different photos from loads of different times. Pictures from Marseille. This is an example of one of the times where I let my film get too warm and it wasn't very happy with me. So it's pretty washed out. But again, it makes the photos feel warm. So even in me messing up, I've kind of got a photo that honestly I really love. I'm a man of nostalgia, so these are the very important items to me. It's my Polaroid album.
Finally, let's look at digital photography, which is something unique entirely. The history of what the first digital camera is or what the first digital photograph was is quite complex, with the first digital photograph arguably dating back to the Victorian era, when scientist Shelford Bidwell drew a butterfly and horse with binary code. In 1975, a team led by Steve Sasson at Kodak brought together decades of research into digital imaging to create this chunky blue and silver box that recorded images on cassette. It worked, but it was purely experimental. It took another 16 years before the first digital cameras were available to buy in the shops. Let's have a look at one of the earliest digital photograph cameras that we have in our collection. In 1992, Switzerland, Logitech released the Photoman Plus for $200. It was able to create image files in a new format called the JPEG. This changed everything, because JPEG is an image format standard that is compatible across all different digital architectures. Outputting images as a JPEG rather than a format only used by Logitech software made the images usable in a wider variety of contexts.
This camera was my first camera, I suppose, that I worked with probably in the mid to late 90s. When I was a kid, it was the camera that I learnt to take photographs with, a Sony digital Mavica, which was one of the first kind of consumer digital cameras. And it was really slow. You'd press the button and it would pause before it took the image, so there was quite a bit of digital delay. I think the memory was probably, I don't know, limited to around 10 pictures on one floppy disk. And then it would make kind of grinding noises while the floppy disk processed the image. So it was this kind of sensory haptic experience, even with digital early on, that really interested me in photography. That first introduction to digital was really important because it gave me the freedom to be really playful with photography and just take pictures of whatever I wanted to and kind of experiment with photography.
A digital photograph is created when the shutter exposes light to the light sensors inside the digital camera. These are either the CCD or the CMOS processors. The processors convert that light information into digital information, ones and zeros. Much like roll film and Polaroid film, the light information is split up into red, green and blue and organized in each pixel accordingly to create the color information in the photo taken. But luckily for us all, we don't need to know any of this to take a digital photograph. Let's meet our final photographer.
My name is Shafak Shabazz and I'm a fashion and commercial photographer. I have always been interested more so into fashion, and I did fashion clothing at college, and I realised that I don't enjoy making clothes because it required too much maths when it came to measurements and everything like that, and I kept unpicking and everything like that. So after I did a bit of styling, I started working with photographers, and the photographers would take pictures during the photo shoots and I'd be styling and I'd look at the photographer, see what they're doing, and it seemed really interesting. It seemed a bit more fun than styling. So then when I was in uni, I thought that I was going to be a stylist, and then when I left uni was when I realised that actually I enjoy photography more. My first camera came from my brother. It's the Canon 5D Mark IV. It's the camera that I still use till this day. I think it was my final major project that got me into photography was when I went back home to Pakistan to shoot my final major project. I didn't know the technical aspects of photography. I was kind of shooting in auto mode the whole time, but I enjoyed it because I felt like it gave me a lot of creative freedom. And then afterwards I kind of learned the actual technical aspect of photography and started shooting in manual and understood like camera settings a bit more. My final major project was called Intertwined. It was how I intertwine my culture and my upbringing in the UK, coming from a Pakistani background. What I did was I took a bunch of Western clothing from the UK, I took it to Pakistan and I made the model dress in that, surrounded by Pakistani sort of like traditional backgrounds, the streets and the mosques and stuff like that. And then I'd do the same in the UK. I would dress the model in South Asian and Pakistani attire, but make her model in like pubs and chicken shops and anything like that. So kind of showing how I like intertwine my upbringing. And Intertwined is a really special one because it kind of determined everything that I do now. I feel like if I didn't do Intertwined, I wouldn't be where I am, purely because it helped me figure out my niche. So this is the photo book. So this is my first commercial picture that I ever took. So that's at the front. This is what I take to meetings with producers and art directors and to like ad agencies and brands. So you've got some pictures here. It's all mainly like my personal projects because they're the ones that get me booked clients. A lot of them, they don't want to see client work, they want to see the stories that you've told yourself. So some of these are the ones that I've taken. I like to explore culture, identity, colour, youth and diversity within my work. I have a very diverse sort of friendship group that I've grown up with, and not just my own culture, I like exploring other people's as well. That's just something that I've always enjoyed doing, and it's something that I want to represent more in the commercial industry and the fashion industry a bit more. I wanted to create projects not just to do with my heritage and my culture, but I also wanted to bring in some of my faith and my religion into my work. So I created the thobe because I wanted to show the Muslim community within the UK and how diverse it is. I actually used my friends for that project, and I used the thobes that were my husband's, so I just put them both in my husband's clothes and I took them to Shepherd's Bush. And I just made the model around the area. Anything that I felt told a bit of a story about British Muslim culture, I just kind of used. So the burqa was so very last minute, very spontaneous. I found a few girls on Instagram. I reached out to them and asked them if they would want to do the shoot. I wanted to use a Persian rug store, and I called them and they said they were going to be open, but when I went it was completely shut and there was no one answering. So next door to the Persian rug store was a museum. So I went to the museum and I was like, okay, let's just try this. Like, we're all here, we might as well try something out. That final picture was actually used for Portrait of Britain. So I won the award of Portrait of Britain for the burqa. I tried to get into film photography purely because I would always buy disposable cameras when I would go on holidays, and I'd just shoot, and then I would go and get it developed from like Snappy Snaps. But I couldn't do that on a professional level purely because I liked the freedom that digital photography gives you. I like to see what I'm shooting there and then. I feel like with film is a bit of anxiety because it's like you don't know what you're going to get until it's developed. And sometimes when I would get my pictures developed on film, it would always not be how I had expected it. With digital photography, I know that I can change anything there and then. If the lighting's off, I can change that. If something isn't right in the camera, I can change that. And I like seeing the pictures there and then. So yeah, it's just the freedom and the lack of anxiety that digital photography gives. It's knowing what I'm shooting will come out correct because I can just look at it there and then.
And the rest is present day as we know it. Being able to take a digital photograph on one of the several cameras on our smartphones whenever we want. Whatever your choice in cameras, it's incredible to think how something that started off as a complicated scientific process requiring chemicals in labs has progressed into an easy tap of the finger. And while silver isn't used directly in the image capturing process of digital photography we all use today, it's silver iodine and halides that worked as the light-sensitive materials in the first 5 photographic developments we went through. So in a way, we have silver to thank for being able to take selfies today.